neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the Timbren Rear Suspension Enhancement on a 2023 Honda Odyssey. Adding suspension enhancement to a minivan is something that a lot of people don't think about until you start to tow with one or have heavy loads in it, and then all of a sudden the suspension really isn't made to have all that weight a lot of times, or even if it is, it's not able to really utilize its full range of motion because the vehicle is going to sag. And partly it's because your jounce bumpers are just designed for comfort, and that's a good thing. But when you're using it for towing that trailer or loading up the back of it, that's when you really start to feel that sag. And it's not just the vehicle sagging in the back that causes issues. Up front, you're going to notice that you have less steering feel, your braking's not going to be as good. Sometimes your headlight heights can pitch up depending on the weight. And also vans really do kind of have a sway to them. They're a large body, and as you make turns, a lot of times you're going to feel that body roll. And I've actually put rear suspension enhancement on my dad's minivan. He has a Toyota Sienna, not an Odyssey, but very similar. And I added some on his because we were using it to move things. And the difference is night and day. It actually feels a little bit sporty when normally driving with no load, but when you start to put weight on it, it just feels a little tougher, like it can handle that weight rather than just dragging the tail end of the vehicle. And that's kind of the great part about these is they're ready to go when you need to use them, but the rest of the time they're just going to be right there and you're going to get a normal ride. So it's a great addition really to any vehicle that you plan on towing or putting weight on. Now these ones in particular are rated at 3,500 pounds capacity, and that's not to say that you're going to bump your towing capacity. That's what it's rated to handle. So pulling a trailer or that heavy load, 3,500 is generally going to be pretty good in reference to what the hitch is rated for. And these are super easy to install. No maintenance required once they're installed, and that's really the great part about these. You pop them in and you're ready to go, and you're going to notice a difference every time you drive your van. Now speaking on that installation, very easy to do, but I'm going to show you a few tips on how to get this properly installed and also removing your old jounce bumper. As far as adding suspension components to your van or upgrades, the reason that these make such a big difference is from the factory, your factory jounce bumpers are designed for comfort, not necessarily having extra load or weight in the van, and they're there to just prevent it from bottoming out, but they're pretty soft, and there's also a pretty large gap left here, and they're pretty short, and that's where our Timbrens come in play. So they're going to go in the same spot, and they're slightly taller, which is going to close up that gap so they'll engage a little bit quicker, and that means that suspension's not really going to allow for it to squash down, whereas this one has a little bit more room to go. So that translates to that sag, which will translate to the front as far as braking, sway, steering feel, kind of all of the above. So this really makes a huge difference, and the great part is they're super easy to install. Once they're installed, there's no maintenance required. So to get your old ones out, if underneath your van's a little bit dirty, you might want to take some soapy water and spray that down to kind of help lubricate it. And sometimes you can get them out by hand by just prying back. That's not always the case, but you can see I'm able to almost get this to pop out. But what you can do is grab either a pry bar or a flathead screwdriver, and as you kind of peel back on this, try to wedge in between that jounce cump and the factory jounce bumper. We should be able to get this to pry out. Now, it is kind of tricky to get it to pop out. It takes a little bit of friction, and it's soft, so it's going to want to mold as you kind of do that. I had my videographer help me with the screwdriver on one side as I really pried on the other, and it just popped out one go. So this is what it looks like, and then comparing it with the Timbren, you can definitely see the difference in height, and that's going to translate again to just engaging a lot quicker. Something else that's interesting is what they're made of. So I'm going to find a hard surface and I'll show you the difference. Now, this isn't obviously an accurate representation of what this is doing in your vehicle, but it might send the point home of the different construction that they're made of, because the Timbrens are going to be set up for a little bit more heavy duty to hold up to that weight. So here in a vise, here's our factory jounce bumper, and I'm just going to use one hand to compress this down, and it's still pretty easy. And that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to compress. That's what it's supposed to do. It's going to absorb some of that shock, but as you put weight, it's just going to mash that down, and that translates to your suspension, your shocks, not really being able to get full stroke, and that's where those Timbrens come into play. So I'll take this out. Now we'll take our Timbren and we're going to drop this in and do the same test. I'm just going to again use one hand, just kind of keep it consistent. And that's already getting really tight for me in this vise with just one hand, just to kind of keep it to where it's nice and not subjective. And you can see the difference. As the other one compresses down, it is that cone shape, so it'll get stronger as you put more pressure, but this one is already fighting against it, which is good. That means that it's going to hit that jounce plate and your suspension's going to be able to hold up and get full stroke. So we can take this out and we'll pop it into our van. Now, since this is taller, what we're going to need to do is grab a floor jack. We're obviously on a lift here, so I'll be using a trans jack, but we're going to raise up on the hitch of the vehicle to get the suspension to be unsprung. It's going to give us more space to get this in place, and also we're going to be using a 2x4, maybe two of them, and we're going to press this up, and then when we lower that suspension down, it should pop this in place. So this is a time that you're going to want to make sure that this jounce cup is nice and clean. That way it's not catching on anything. Also, if you want to lubricate it with either soapy water, you could probably use a silicone spray as well. That's going to help push it in. So we'll seat this in. Obviously, you can see this fluted portion that's going to sit in this bottom cup, and then just a small block of wood here, and we're going to just wedge it on that flat spot. And that way, when we lower the van down, this is going to press that in for us. Try to get a straight shot on it as much as you can. You may have to do this a few times. But once it pops in, you'll be good to go. So I am going to lubricate this. I'm going to use a little bit of silicone spray. I think that's really going to help. So that was a nice audible pop into place. Everything looks good. We'll just raise it back up, get our block of wood out, and then all we have to do is repeat on the other side. And that was a look and installation of the Timbren Rear Suspension Enhancement on a 2023 Honda Odyssey.